Hey everybody, welcome back to Fish With Me Today. Today we're going to be talking about Senkos. And how you're going to get set up with them and start catching fish for under $100. Now, what I like to use as far as rod and reel for this technique is nothing but, if you're a budget fisherman, I know you've heard of this, an Abu Garcia Black Max combo. It's a 6'6" medium rod. It's got a fast tip, but it is somewhat forgiving. It's about, I don't know, 30-70 on your backbone there. It's a 6-4-1 reel. Caswell, it's a good reel for the money. For your reeling rod, the best thing I could find was on Walmart. They've got them for about $60. They range in between $60 and $70 depending on where you're shopping. But the goal of this is to get you catching fish for under $100 with Senkos. Now, the line I like to spool this up with is a 12-pound fluorocarbon. I like to use either Sunline 12-pound. Super fluorocarbon is what this is called. It's just their general brand fluorocarbon. It's a great line. Or I like to use P-line, 100% fluorocarbon in the 12-pound variety. Now, the only difference between these two really is your Sunline's got a little bit more stretch. Also like to use it for crankbaits and things like that because of the stretch factor. The P-line may be a touch stronger, just barely stronger. They're both exceptional fluorocarbon line. One thing I will say is if you're dealing with gigantic fish, 6.5 and over, you may want to go up to like a 14-pound Sunline Super. They don't make 14-pound in the P-line. The reason 14-pound is so much better than 15 when you're trying to keep your line diameter small, it just really helps. You wouldn't think, 14 pounds, 15 pounds, that's not much of a difference. But when you're trying to get a weightless wacky to sink properly, it really does make a difference. I use that 14-pound a lot. Also for like 5-inch swim baits and things like that. Just because that 15 and that P-line is pretty thick, and the 14 and the Sunline is a lot thinner, and you can get away with still having action on your baits by just dropping a pound in your line size. So, hooks, I've been through a lot with these hooks. I've tried a lot of different wacky hooks. I used to throw the Trocar weedless wacky, and the hookup ratio, I'm sorry, it was just not that great. I really love Trocar hooks. They make fantastic hooks. However, for some reason, the weedless wacky just did not work out for me. And this is on various rods, trying it on spinning rods, bait casting rods. I tried setting the hook lightly. I tried setting it hard. I tried swinging to the side, swinging up. I tried everything to make those Trocar hooks work. And the hookup ratio on this hook, which is a owner weedless wacky, is so much better. So much better. There's also a version of this owner weedless wacky. The other version's called the owner jungle weedless wacky. Now, if you can get your hands on some of these, grab them up. I haven't been able to try them yet, but if it's the same style hook with a more stiff weed guard, is what I believe it to be, it should be a phenomenal hook. So if you can get your hands on those, definitely go for it. They've been sold out in a lot of stores. The weed guard on the original owner weedless wacky is pretty decent. It's just a double Little double weed guard right there. I do throw it in the wood and everything, but when you're throwing it like in brush and really sparse wood and stuff like that, I would recommend the jungle because you will get hung up a bit. It's definitely worth it trying to get that bait in there to catch those fish, but the jungle would probably be a bit better. Now, if you're trying to get your bait to fish that are 6 feet or deeper, you know, depending on your water clarity, you can get a Wacky Hook with a weight on it. This right here is the Bass Pro Shop brand. And it works fairly well. What I don't like about it, it's just got the single weed guard. And for this presentation, I feel like you really need the double. It doesn't get hung up that bad, but I just don't like it. You have to pick grass off of it more frequently and things like that. So they do work though. The BPS brand jig head, weighted jig head for Wacky Hooks does work. What I prefer is an owner weighted Wacky Hook. It's got the same thing. It's got the double weed guard, which I like. Very sharp hook, and it has a nice fall. The bait falls, and it falls well balanced, and it looks great. Now, colors. If you're just getting into fishing Senkos, I wouldn't go crazy with the colors. There's so many colors of different Senkos, and for good reason. You can get really dialed in on matching the hatch with your baits. But for starters, I'd recommend 3 colors. Obviously, a lot of you guys are knowing what's coming next. Green pumpkin. You can't go wrong with the green pumpkin Senko. It works in clear water. It works in dirtier water. It just works. Green pumpkin is one of the most natural colors you can throw, and it's a great selection. If you've got dark water, overcast, or your fish are feeding on dark bait like bluegill or something like that, I usually go with the darker color. This right here is black with blue flake. It works very well in your darker water situations. And you can mix it up too. If you feel like your fish don't have a blue flake sheen to it, you could use red flake. And things like that, you know, to try to match your hatch. But something dark, black, something close to it for your dirtier water. And lastly, of course, some type of shad color. This right here is a white with chartreuse. It's a pretty good color, but just something in the shad variety. And those 3 colors will get you going. Now, talking cost again, about $60 for this. The P line's a little bit more expensive, like I was saying, than your Sun line. So if you're trying to keep, I think either one with the hooks will keep it under $100 for you. But your Sun line is a little bit more affordable. It's 14 for 200 yards of line, and the P-line fluorocarbon is a little bit more expensive, but you get 250 yards of line. And again, if you're dealing with big fish, you may want to go to 14 pounds. Basically, with this 12-pound setup, if you get a fish on that's, say, 5+, you're going to want to set your spool up to give them just a little bit of drag. Now, if you're not around any cover, obviously you can let the fish pull more drag. But if you are around cover, grass, wood, etc., you can let him pull drag for a second so he doesn't break you off, but keep your finger ready to stop that spool. What I've done a lot of times when I get a big one on 12-pound line with a Wacky, they'll start darting over to the cover. First thing they can get to, the closest thing they can get to. And what I'll do is when he charges really hard, I'll let him take just a tiny, tiny bit of drag. But as soon as he gets close to that cover, I stop. I stop him by putting my finger on the spool, not tightening the drag. So you do have some drag, but you're able to control it and dictate it. So, with that being said, you're also going to want to use the 14-pound line when you're using a weighted wacky. You would think, you know, excuse me, a 16th ounce weight or an 1/8 ounce weight wouldn't add that much weight to your line to break it off, but for some reason it matters. It matters. I really prefer the 14-pound line if I'm going even a 16th ounce jig head. 16th ounce to a 1/4 ounce or 3/8 ounce, I want that 14-pound line on there, most definitely, which will still work fine with this rod and reel. So it really depends on the size of your fish at your fishery to determine whether you're going to want that 14-pound or 12-pound line. Now that's also too, if you get something 6.5 or over, really over 6.5. 6.5 is pretty good to catch with this rod, but when you get over 6.5, he's really, really going to bend that rod almost to the point where it feels like it's going to break. So if you got gigantic fish, you may want to consider upgrading your rod at some point in time, but this will definitely get you going and definitely get you catching some fish on Senkos in the meantime. I hope you liked the tutorial style video. I had to take a break from fishing for a minute, not by choice. If you watched the last video, my Explorer engine is done for. It's toast. It was such a good truck too. I'm totally blown about it, just like the engine. But you live and you learn. I was recommending people to change their oil pump if they're driving the same vehicle, because that's what happened to mine. I wish I would have done it before this happened because it was a really good running truck. So in the meantime, I'm going to do some tutorials, maybe some bank fishing, who knows. If you liked the video, hit that subscribe button. Appreciate you watching, and we'll check you on the next one. Alright guys, I'm going to show you how to rig these Senkos wacky style. So basically what you're going to want to do is put it through the middle. Where I like to put it is I like to take the tip of the point. If you look, you're going to see some lettering on here. You want your lettering at the bottom. So when your bait falls, your lettering will be at the bottom. It doesn't make much of a difference, but it makes a tiny bit. Now, if you can see this middle part right here that doesn't have the ribs, there's a tiny little line as well through the middle of the bait. So what I do is I get on that line and I get on this line. That way your letters will be on the bottom. Come straight through, just like so. And there you have it. Wacky style ready to go.